Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another weekly wrap up where I go over all the books that I've read in the previous week, tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly about it. This is week 5 of 2023. If you'd like to see the previous weeks, I will have a playlist up there for you. We're not going to waste any time except for the fact that we're going to waste a little bit of time because I have a couple things to clear up and touch on before we get into the books that I read. First off, we do have two new patrons to shout out and welcome. We have Kimberly and we have Madhu. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I just want to thank both of you for your support to me here. It means so much and it really helps me continue to do what I love. And it's amazing. And it allows me to do things like the awesome vacation that I'm going on this coming week. Yes, I know I've been talking about it in different videos and just going on about this happening, but it's finally time. Actually, after I film, edit, and upload this, because I didn't want to be missing 2 weeks worth of reading wrap-ups. So as soon as this is done, all my bags are packed. I'm ready to go. And I'm going home to Pillager, Minnesota. And then me and my sister are going to the Twin Cities to catch a plane to Florida, and we will be at the Wizarding World at Universal Studios, Florida for a week. I am so excited. I'm even wearing a Horcrux right now because I'm so excited. I hope Voldemort doesn't try to fuck with my head. You know, you never know. But anyway, the other thing I want to talk about just briefly is I made a TikTok about this yesterday, and I did have a couple people who they always tell me when I make a TikTok discussing something, they're like, Jen, we're from a different country that doesn't support TikTok. We can't see this. And I am so sympathetic to that, and I'm sorry that, honestly, your life is probably better without TikTok. I totally agree. But sometimes when I need to make a quick discussion video that I'm not going to film a whole thing for, TikTok is the best form to do it. It just is. And Instagram doesn't go up to 10 minutes yet like TikTok does. Not that I want Instagram to do that, but I promised that I would talk about what was in that TikTok real quick at the beginning of this video. I'm not going to make it 10 minutes like that TikTok is. If you want to see the TikTok and the full deets about it, you can go to my TikTok, The Book Refuge, to see it. But for those of you who don't, I reviewed a book last week that was When a Moth Left a Bee by Pepper Winters. This book just released yesterday, February 3rd, and my biggest complaints about this, which I talk about in depth last week's wrap up, is that this book was too long. Just to clear up, like, the Kindle book that I received as an ARC said that it was 900 and some pages. That's not what it is. Kindle notoriously doesn't track the same as an author when they're formatting it, but it was still hefty. It was almost a 600-page book. It was a fantasy book. Again, I won't go into all the details about what the story is. That's what we did last week. But on release day, someone messaged me in a post about, in last week's wrap up, to say that Pepper Winters had cut 40K words out of the book. And I was like, what? So I went to her blog post, which, if I remember, I'll link that down below. Again, otherwise you can just look up Pepper Winters and see that she had been looking at the reviews coming in, and 7 days before the book went live, she just had a bad feeling that she wasn't giving this book its best chance, mostly because of how bloated that it was. So she has promised that she's like, I didn't change any of the story, but I took in the critiques, the reviews people were giving me, and I cut. And she cut it down from almost 600 pages to 397. So that's a whole other book. Okay, she cut 40K. She cut a novella out. And I gotta say, having obviously not the time to read this new copy though, my rating currently stands at 3.5 stars for this book, which I felt like was really generous of me. I really do look forward to rereading this book. I know a lot of people had it on their Feb TBR. I know some people after seeing my review were like, ooh, I don't know. And I agree with you, because that book as it stood was bloated and over the top. I was intrigued by the premise. I was intrigued by what she was doing with this fantasy. There was a lot that I loved. It didn't have the same Pepper Winter things that I haven't liked from her in other aspects. I was so engaged, but it was so long, and by the end I had drug it out. Anyway, but she cut all that out, and I very much want to reread the book. So my plan though is like, I do not have time right now. Like, I just don't have time to reread this in the month that it came out. However, she is offering an updated arc to the people who read arcs for it. So I will probably take advantage and grab that. And when the next book comes out, I will reread this first book to prepare for the second book. Because I gotta tell you that I respect Pepper Winters, like, so much for doing this. Really, like, how many authors like would just say, well, it's not going to be for everyone? And there are plenty of glowing reviews. Like, that book has a very high rating. But here's the thing. Most of those ratings are from like diehard fans. They are yes people, and there's nothing wrong. I'm a yes person for quite a few authors too. Okay, I let them get by with things because we do that for the authors we love. And it's like, that's just how it is. It's okay to be a simp for an author. But, you know, being someone who reviews books, I try to be a little less simpy when possible so that I'm giving honest reviews for stuff. And I have no, like, loyalty to Pepper Winters. But what I love about this is that she knew something wasn't right. And instead of just saying, well, like, I wrote a book and you didn't, or, oh, it's going to be fine, she took a huge risk. And a week before the book came out, she cut all those words, which, again, number one, if she was able to cut 40K and not change the story, I feel good in what I put out. And I also just want to leave this as an example of, like, I don't usually like to do critical reviews. That's not what I do. Like, it's just not what I do. Like, I enjoy it or I don't, or I really hate it. Like, I don't really do too much of the nuance. Like, I know I'm good at, like, talking about what I like, but when I leave reviews, if I don't like something, I don't normally take the time to bitch about it. You know, I'm just like, it was a 2-star, and I move on because I just don't spend time. But for this book, I just was so disappointed that I did that. Anyway, I said I wouldn't take 10 minutes, but I'm almost taking 10 minutes right now doing this. So my point being, if you were put off by, you know, me saying how long it was last time, maybe download this book. It is in KU. Maybe give it a try, because there was a lot of promise that I found in it. And now it has been cut of 200 pages and 400 pages. Let's be honest. That sounds like a lot, but a lot of romance novels these days are around that, you know, they're writing that hefty price tag. So I just wanted to do that. That's what my video is about. I surmised a little bit more. Again, if you go to her blog and read her reasonings for it, I was like, I just have to praise this. Even though, again, I haven't read the edited version yet, I know that what was in that original was good. I just said it was very repetitive and it was a bloated story, and she's apparently taken a lot of that out. I just want to show off my fucking tattoo today, okay? Can my shirt behave? Anyway. Sorry. It's beautiful. Okay, now we're getting into the books. 7 minutes in, and we have a lot of books to talk about. We have 15 books to talk about, which is awesome. Or 14? We have 14 books to talk about, and most all of them went very well for me. So we're going to dive in. I had a few books left from like January to chat about, and then I read 10 books in February already, which is great. Yeah, okay. So I listened to Vengeful Heart by Tiffany Roberts. This is book 2 / it's kind of a like bridge novella in the Infinite City series. So this one's also about Arcanthus and Samantha, and I had an audio code for this one as being part of Tiffany Roberts' Patreon. I had an audio code for a couple books in this series, and this was book 2. I'm trying to make my way through this series, and I had read the one with Ark and Sam, book 2. Oh, this is book 3. Is this book 3? Yeah. During the Kindle Unlimited Readathon. So this was just a little like 4-hour audiobook. I had it at 2 times speed. It took me like 2 hours. I did it while I was doing some of my cross-stitching projects, which my Patreons are well familiar with by now because I've been putting them in things. And so this was cute. It's called Vengeful Heart. Arcanthus is going on a little trip to get vengeance for Samantha for something that happened to her in the past, and something that may be threatening their future, and it was great. I gave it 4 stars. This one was only a 2 on the Spice Scale though, because he's traveling for most of the time. So there is some phone sex that he has with Samantha, which is fun. Like, they have video call. They have Skype sex, I guess is what we call it in this. And I thought it was really cute. I really liked Ark and Samantha, and I can't wait to read more in this series. Like, it's really just very comforting. Robert and Tiffany write very loving couples, like almost nauseatingly so, but I just love it. I love it so much. I love it. you never have to worry about a hero being cruel to a heroine in a Tiffany Roberts, because Rob, who writes all of the male parts, if you don't know this, I've done an interview with Tiffany and Robert, but they write in tandem together. They actually do like RPG while they write, you know, like they do it like it is a role-playing game, and she will write what her characters do and he writes what his do, and he just can't write his characters being mean to Tiffany. And I think that is so cute. So you will never really see, there might be enemies to lovers, but they'll never be mean hero. There's a lot of kidnapping and seduction in their books. Anyway, then I read Under a Northern Sky by L.L. Meyer. This one was, you know, also part of the readathon. Well, all of these ones were, right? Because I was reading these on Saturday and Sunday, which was when it was. And this was one that had been on my KU the longest. I had downloaded it when it came out and then just never got around to it. This is a barbarian romance. I guess we'd call it historical. Like, I put it as historical because it would kind of fit, but it doesn't have a date that's specific, and it's not quite written like an olden time book, but it definitely gave me like Viking or barbarian vibes, okay? This is an arranged marriage, forced marriage between this girl named Rena, and the hero's name is Luca, and she is getting brought to him to be his wife, and neither of them really wants to do this. She is considered a barbarian, or not a barbarian, but she's considered a princess, but she's actually lived a very tough life, and our hero doesn't know that. He doesn't know what this lady has been through, and he's a bit of a jerk to her. There are some crazy situations that happen when she's on her way to him that end up with her being put into like prison-ish, like in the dungeon, when she gets there, and they have a pretty rocky beginning. But I really enjoyed this, how these two ended up falling for each other. The hero, also why I kind of categorize it as historical, is that it has some of the vibes of an old school romance, of like a Julie Garwood, where like the keep starts to fall for her while the hero is still being stubborn, and I love that kind of vibes. And it also has the vibes of like, I don't want you, but like I don't want anyone else to have you, and then slowly she's wiggling her way into his heart, and I love that stuff. I love it. And so I ended up giving this 5 stars, and it does have, I mean, it's not a slow burn, but it definitely feels like it's a slowish burn. But then things got spicy between these two, and it was great. So this was a 3 on the spice scale, and this actually had some kinkies in it, which was great. So there was some breath play, there was some domination, spanking, there's he's too big. Great, he's too big. She's not a virgin though, which I also liked in this. Like, she had a lover before him, so he's too big, but it's not he's too big, she's a virgin. Oh, there was also like, I think there's anal in this one too. Like, again, it has historical vibes, but it's not, don't expect like necessarily the talk, the speech to be like that. But if there are things you really love about old school historicals, I think you will like this. But also, if you don't like old school historicals, it's just kind of like a dark romance ish. I don't know, it's so hard to explain. This book just doesn't fit into normals, but I enjoyed it so much. 5 stars, 3 on the spice scale. There are trigger warnings for essay, abuse, violence, and death. Like, there's a lot going on. All right, then I read Plant Daddy Part 1 by Katie Robichaud, also part of the KU Readathon. I think you can maybe tell by my attitude that I was not impressed, and I'm disappointed because I've liked Katie Robichaud that I've read before, and this was a part of like the Blurred Lines like grouping of some author. You know, this happens every now and then. Like, it's a grouping of authors. They're writing like, and this, okay, the reason why, no steam in this, and it was a part 1, and it is labeled as a part 1, but the character, like, it was still a decent size. Like, it was a 200-page novella as a part 1, and the heroine is an author. This one is kind of own voices because Katie Robichaud has a lot of her like social anxieties and OCD and ADHD that the heroine has, and she's trying to write a book about dom and sub, and she wants someone to do research with, and so she gets on a website to speak, kind of like FetLife, to speak with a dom, and they end up having, like, the entire thing was emails and messages, but they have met each other in real life before. So I was just very disappointed. I was very disappointed, and I don't care that this is a novella. This could have been like, it was 200 pages and they never have anything sexy between them and they're only messaging. And I'm like, fuck off for giving me a whole first part of like a duet or a part that nothing happens. Like, I'm sorry, content warning for me. That's a trigger warning for me when it's an author who writes spicy books and she writes an entire novella where nothing sexual happens at all. Fuck off. So I gave this 3 stars and I should have gave it less, and there was no steam on my spice rating. All right. I'm sorry. I don't have patience for that. Like, we know this. I will have low steam. I will have chemistry. I'll have whatever. But this was not told to me as a clean romance. So it needs a content warning for no content. Okay? I'm so mad. And like, I think the second part is out now, but I don't even really want to read it because like, you didn't engage me or keep me hooked. And then there was nothing. Okay, we got to move on. We don't have time for 2 Starbucks. Then I read Tin Queen by Devney Perry. This was my last read of January that I squeezed in there because I wanted to wrap up this series in January. I read book 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in January, and I'm really glad that I did. This one was about Nova and Emmett. This is a situation of sleeping with the enemy or like an undercover. Nova is the daughter of kind of our villain of the series, a rival MC, even though our MC isn't an MC anymore, and she's going to try to ruin them from the inside by making one of their men fall for her and then like blowing up their lives. Because, I mean, it's not like they even have operations anymore. They don't do this. So, yeah, it was so good. Like, there's not too much to talk about because you kind of have to have read all the others. But this series was very comforting to me. I listened to all the audiobooks for these while I was doing projects or cross-stitching and things. And I just loved doing that. I love listening to these, and I definitely want to read another Devney Perry series. Yeah, definitely want to do that because this series, the found family, the we're there for you no matter what, no questions asked. That's the kind of shit that I love. Like, I love that. So that was 5 star. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. And there we go. Okay, so then I started my February reads. And I read first a little quickie. I finished up Rasputin's Story by Sophie Lark. Back when in December she had put out part 1 of this, which, yeah, she'd split it into 2 parts. So this is on her Patreon. It's for her patrons only currently. I don't know what her plans are to give it to anyone. Probably not. You have to be in her Patreon. But this was a like prequel about what gets Rasputin from basically like his childhood to the point where he's like ready to cause destruction. So it was pretty good. It was nice to get a look at his what built him. And there's also some pretty kinky stuff in here with him and his vampire mate. So yeah, there was some like blood play happening, some bondage, and of course mass murder of innocent people. So be prepared for that. All right, then I gave it 4 stars. It didn't it has a spice scale, but I don't know. Because like the kind of sex is really crazy, but there's not like a lot of it. So that's the kind of one that's like hard to rank it. Because it's not like, there's kinky stuff in there, these vampires, but there wasn't a lot. So it's hard. Like technically I would put it at a 2, but like it has sex acts that I would put in a 4. You know what I mean? So if you like quality over quantity, then it's like a 4. But if you're talking about quantity, then it's a 2. So there's that. All right, then I finished Entranced by the Basilisks. So this was my last book that I had on my TBR for the KU Readathon. So I still really wanted to finish this book. It was a high priority one for me. And this is the newest book by Lillian Lark in her Monster Love series. I caught up to that in January. I had read the 2 novellas that I own, but hadn't gotten to yet, like her werewolf one and the lake monster. And then this was one of the full-length ones. So she puts out a full-length and a mini and a full-length and a mini. Although I think the next one is supposed to be full-length too. The next one's going to be a dragon. Hoarded by the Dragon is going to be the next one. So I'm excited for that. But this one is an MMF, and it's 2 basilisks that are Jasper and Ari, and they actually have a history together. They've been fuck buddies off and on for quite a while. Ari is the oldest. He's a very old basilisk, and Jasper is younger and not as powerful, as well as the type of, I think he's a half-breed. Is he a half-breed? I'm not sure, but he's not fully in control of his powers. But Jasper and Ari, like, Ari really wants to be with Jasper, but Jasper is afraid that his reputation, because, like, there's some stuff to do with his reputation, would ruin Ari's, and Ari's very respectable. So Ari is very, like, seductive and always trying to win him over, and Jasper is like, no, we can't be together. No. But they should be together. And then we have Amelia, who is actually a book restorer, historian type thing, and she works with Jasper at, like, this museum or this library, and there's this book that she opens, and she gets cursed, what she thinks is a curse, and basically she, like, turns into Medusa. So she grows snakes for hair, and her gaze can turn people to stone. And so she's terrified, so she needs help with this. So she goes to speak with a witch, and this witch ends up being the witch who is the matchmaker, and they, like, do some research into this. We find out it's not actually a curse, it's actually a blessing that denotes someone who will make a serpent kin's mate. So it's to, you know, say, hey, this person want to make a good mate. They'll make good babies for you. But she doesn't want that because she can't control her snakes, and they're poisonous, and they bite people that she cares about, and then they have to get them healed because they will, like, die from this poison. But it turns out that Jasper and Ari knows a few things about this, and he will help her. And it'd be safest if she would come stay with him at his home. And also Jasper will come stay there too, because of course. Because the snakes, they will still, like, bite them, but, like, they won't die from the poison or anything. And it just kind of, like, stings them. And in fact, they might get a little turned on by these bites sometimes. So it gets a little interesting sometimes. But anyway, Ari kind of has a secret plan, because you don't really, like, get rid of this curse. Like, again, it's a blessing. And he actually wants to seduce both Jasper and Amelia. So this was delicious. This had, like, Grumpy Sunshine vibes, forced proximity because they stay together. This was a menage, obviously. Fated mate aspect, kind of, as well. So yeah, I gave this a 4.5 star, and it was a 3.5 on the spice scale. There was some good kinks in here, okay? As Lillian Lark usually does. There was biting, breeding, lots of fluids, shifted sex, so Ari can shift, and, like, if you've read any snake monsters, they have a slit that, like, their cock, like, boop, peekaboo, like, it comes out, and you can, if you are strong, like Ari, you can hold your own cock in, and then you can be fucked. So there is some of him being fucked and him doing the fucking. There is DP monster peens in here. There's anal that happen. Like, it has so many fun kinks, okay? But the trigger warning is there are snakes, okay? And not the basilisks, because, like, they are man-sized and they are sexy, so it's cool. But literally, like, I had some sensory, like, chills thinking about her curse, where she has snakes just crawling over her head, like, hanging out, and that creeped me out a little bit, okay? I have to tell you. I still gave this a 4.5 star because Lillian can pull the emotions out of me like nobody's business. Like, oh, she makes me feel for her, like, fluffy hero, like, oh gosh, so good. But it was uncomfortable, and whenever her snakes were brought up, I'd be like, whoop, and I would move along because it would creep me out. So, I'm just saying. But it was a good time. All right. Next, I had to continue with this series. I just couldn't wait. And so I read God of Pain by Rena Kent. Again, while I listened to the audio for this one. I hadn't listened to an audio for God of Malice, and I kind of regret that. But it was okay. I did that one you know, at the 1st of January, and I like annotated it while I was reading it. But this is book 2. This one is about Creighton and Annika. So Annika, let me pull out the tree. So Annika is the daughter of Adrian and Leah, and so her older brother is Jeremy, which we will get to Jeremy later on in this, let me tell you. And Creighton is the youngest son of Aiden and Elsa. He's actually an adopted son. So yeah, he's actually to the cousin of Glyndon, who is from the first one. And Killian, nope, he's not related to anybody in here. Okay, so yeah, so this one was very interesting. This one is like listed as a Grumpy Sunshine, like new adult dark romance. And honestly, the Grumpy Sunshine was like the best part of this book. It was so good. So in this one, Creighton, he's part of the friend group. Annika, she's actually like, so different because she goes to the opposite school, right? So there's like the British school, which is the Royal Elite, and then there's King's U, and Annika, she actually goes to Royal Elite, so she's the American going to Royal Elite U, and so she's kind of the fish out of water over there, but she's really like fit in with the girls. She lives with 3 other of the girls. She lives with Ava, Glyndon, and Cecily. And Creighton is like a part of the group, but he's very quiet and very like broody, and Annika always kind of like pokes at him, and she'll like make food for him even though she's horrible at making food, and he'll still eat it because he doesn't care what food tastes like. And he also has some sexual deviancies that him and his cousin Landon or his friend Landon? Yeah, it's his cousin Landon, who Landon is a wild card, okay, where like, I'm excited for Landon's book because Rena can do great things, but Landon is the shit. Like, he is a little shit in this series so far. Like, he's caused most of our drama for people. But he is also into pain as well, and so Creighton, he will go to the sex club so he can like hurt ladies, but he doesn't normally fuck them. He just likes hurting them until they get off and whatever. And so Annika keeps like poking at him, and she's like, why can't we be friends? And he's like, because I have deviant tastes and I would ruin you. And so she's like, oh, okay. And so then she's not gonna mess with him anymore, but now it's too late. And like it says on the back, she's like, I made a terrible mistake. She longed for the wrong one, who is bad news with a gorgeous exterior. But now he won't stop until he breaks me or I break him. So this book had so many twists and turns. I gasped out loud a couple of times. Of course, we have all of our sexy kinks that get involved with this one, because he is into pain. So there is BDSM, there's pain kink, spanking, punishments for not doing what he wants. And then there is kidnapping and some of those kinky things. But then there are some heavy trigger warnings with this one. Both of these two have had thoughts of suicide before. Because he was adopted, he actually does remember some of his past. His mother unalived herself and tried to kill him at the same time. And he was rescued by someone who actually won't tell you who that is. But he has wanted to find the people who ruined his father, even though like his father was horrible. He doesn't want revenge for his father, but he blames the person who brought down his father for his loss of innocence. Because if his father wouldn't have brought Brent down, then his mother wouldn't have tried to end him and end herself. So it was very interesting. Like, he's not trying to get revenge for his dad. He's trying to get revenge for the little boy that he lost. And I was like, that is an interesting way to look at it. So yeah. And then, yeah, there's mention of essay to a side character, suicidal ideation, and also, yeah, I think suicidal ideation covers it, but it happens in multiple ways. These two have an intense relationship, of course, but like, I just felt their connection so much at the same time. Like, it was so interesting. So this was another 5-star one for me. It was a 4.5 on the spice scale. So I really enjoyed it. I'm liking this series a lot. Then I did a reread of Hidden Truths. This is one that I did for a patron this month, so I was annotating this. This is book 3 in the Perfectly Imperfect series. I was trying to get a jump on some of my annotating for the month since, you know, let me mention it again, I'm going on vacation for a week, and I know when I get back I'm going to be stressed AF, so I was trying to get ahead of it a little bit. So yeah, this one is Sergey and Angelina, and this one is Sergey and Mikhail, who Mikhail is a hero from book 2, which, by the way, the author just put out a bonus scene with Mikhail as like a dad, older on, and I really need to go read that because it looks so cute. But anyway, Mikhail and Sergey had went to cut off a drug shipment that was being sent up from Mexico by this douchebag down there, and Angelina had been smuggled onto this vehicle by her grandmother because this evil man in Mexico had killed her father and was trying to force her to marry him so he could have power. And so her grandmother hears about this shipment and smuggles her daughter on it and is telling her to try to get in contact with some friends they have in the States so she can be safe. But this vehicle gets intercepted by the Russians. Yeah, by the Russians. It's Romans people. He finds her in there, almost dead, and is like, I'm taking her home with me. And they're like, no, you can't. And he's like, fucking try and stop me. So there's him, and he has his guard dog. And then there's Felix, who is his Alfred, although he calls him Albert because he doesn't call him Alfred. Like, it's funny. And he's going to keep her safe. He also, like, knows who she is, but she thinks she's being so secretive and is, like, hiding who she is. And he's like, I know who you are. Like, I know who our enemy's family is and everything. And he just wants to, like, keep her. And she also helps, like, calm his demons a little bit because he has severe PTSD. He was kind of an experiment in the military. And so, like, he had served for quite a few years and they really, like, fucked with his head a lot. And so now he has these states where he will, like, almost kill someone. He has nightmares. Don't wake him up when he's sleeping. Like, a lot of things we've seen with PTSD. And the thing is, like, our heroine, like, she doesn't understand that or know any of that. She just knows he's acting strange. And his friends and family see that he changes when she's there. And, like, that she's helping him. So, anyway, this was 5-star. 3 on the spice scale. This one has the trigger warnings for death of a parent, PTSD, assault, attempted essay, and violence. So, love this series so freaking much. I loved that. I was seeing Rachel from, is it Teacher Rachel? I always forget what it's called, but what her page is called, but I saw her finally reading these and I was like, yes, everyone needs to read these. These are amazing. All right, then, we're making good time. I'm proud of myself. I read the new release Lore by Lily Mayne. And I have some mixed feelings about this one. Okay. I have some mixed feelings about this one. I was highly anticipating this. This is book 7 in her Monstrous series. Yeah, I just love her books. So the thing with this one is Lore is, I think they're not a type of fae. What are they even called? Like, I've totally blanked, but they're the certain kind of people. And there is this rift that shows up in Lore's, or Vince, they're called Vince, V-I-N-T is what they were called. And it's this blue man. He's beautiful. He is totally a twink. That's how it is described in the book. That is not just me saying it. That's what Lily Mayne is saying. And he's a leader of this settlement that they have, of their, like, area that he has. But he doesn't really want to, but his brother and him, like, it was decided that he would be after his mother had died. And anyway, he doesn't really want to be in this role and is kind of, like, hesitant about it. But this book actually starts in the 1980s. And so this is 10 years before the rifts appear everywhere else and all of the monsters go into Earth. But this is also not in Earth. This is in a different world. And this is a world that we have seen before if you've read Win. And it's also the world that at the end of Seraph, they want to go to so that their humans can have a long life like them. Okay, anyway, a little bit of spoiler background, but it is important for this. So anyway, this hole appears in one of the guest rooms at his palace, and over the next, like, few weeks, it gets bigger and bigger until it's, like, a pretty large like rift. And they can tell there's something on the other side, but we're afraid to go through it. And then one day someone falls through, and it's a human. And that's where we meet Jugs, who his name is actually Michael, but his nickname is Jugs. And he is called a himbo hero, and he's dressed in these like tiny shorts and this cutoff shirt because he was working at a summer camp, and they were kind of like dressed like that for like the games that they were playing with the kids or whatever. And Jugs falls through. So neither of them can understand each other. Lore, his brother Leary, he is like, are we going to be invaded? What's going on? So they kind of keep Jugs captive, and they take him down to the dungeons. And Lore just feels so bad because he immediately thinks he's beautiful, and Jugs is so sad and scared. He doesn't know how he ended up there, and he's crying and afraid and shivering. And so first Lore like gives him like a robe and gives him food and blankets, and like can't understand each other. And Lore just feels so bad. And so he ends up, I mean, he's the leader, but his brother is his like head of guards and everything, but he smuggles Jugs out. So he sneaks Jug back through the rift. So he's been there for like 6 hours. Like, he hasn't been there a horrible long time. So Jugs, now we get Jugs POV, and he's back in the real world. And the times are the same, so we'll say that. Like, it's been like 6 hours. And the police have been called in. Everyone's looking for him. And he's like, oh, I just got lost. Like, how does he explain what happened? And now he's wearing this robe, too. And, yeah. So, basically what happens with this story, like, not to go through everything, is that Jugs ends up wanting to see Lore again. And he goes back. Because like his life on Earth like isn't that great. And so what begins is that Jugs basically has a secret lover in this other world that he goes to visit every night. He moves to the town because he was just working there for the summer camp. He moves to this town where this rift is in the forest, like in a tree, and he moves there so that he can go see Lore every day. And they fall in love. And it's really beautiful. But what drags this down has to do with a spoiler that happens at like 50-60% into this book, which I'm not going to get into here because I'm not. But something happens that brings this story to a complete standstill and then gets us up to the current timeline. So there's something that happens that takes us from the 1980s to present time. And I was not a fan of you. Okay, so this book, the first 50% of this book was a 4.5, 5-star book for me. They were so cute together. Lore, he has these like piercings everywhere. He's very beautiful. His blue skin is gorgeous, and Jugs is so infatuated, and they're falling in love. And then this thing that happens that gets us to the present time just tanked the story for me. This was also a book that was originally going to be a novella, and is her longest book to date. So I understand how maybe she didn't want it to be a novella, but you know, this is kind of sounding a little familiar to something that I explained about an author in the beginning, where I wish that Lily had cut out some repetitive scenes and that she had cut out some of the dead time in this book, because this is a book to me that should have been at most 400 pages, because it also has a lot of repetitive scenes. A lot of the repetitive scenes are lovely and they're sexy things, and that's great, but it is way too long, and I was so frustrated that I ended up giving this one 3.5. And it was a 3 on the spice scale. There's a lot of sex in the first half, but it's pretty like normal stuff. So yeah, that's what I'm going to leave it at. This is probably my least favorite in the series, but it doesn't put me off of Lily Mayne. It makes me very excited for the next stories. We're supposed to get Leary and Kat next, I believe is the next couple. And then there's another couple that we're going to get as well. So like, I'm not put off of it. It's just, again, it has to do with very bloated size, and that I know Lily Mayne always struggles to cut back word count because her books have just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And even when she's going to write us like a bonus short, like they end up being really long. And like, I love that. So it's not like I'm being scathing about this or super pissed. It was so long and like, I just felt jerked around by it. I don't know another way to say it. Okay, we got to move on. We got to move on because we still have some important books to talk about. And this is going to be long. So next, this one will be quick though. I read The Titan's Bride by ITKZ. I think that's just how we're saying it. So this was actually a viewer suggestion, but I had already had my eye on it too. So when someone put this in my book rec form, I was like, heck yes, I'm going to get it. And the first 2 volumes were actually at my Barnes & Noble. So I snagged it. It's hard to look at. This is a boy's love. This is also like kind of a monster romance. I don't know. But one hero is a giant. He's a titan. And his name is Caius. And, Prince Caius. And then there is Koichi Mizuki, I'm so sorry, who is a senior in like high school, and he finds himself in the world of titans. Not only is he no longer anywhere near home, but one of the giants, Prince Caius, has claimed him as his bride. Thanks to a disturbing world-ending prophecy, the prince's upcoming nuptials cannot be with anyone of his world. And since Caius has no plans to send him back, he is wholeheartedly set on taking him as his wife. So this is extremely erotic. This is what I wish some did. So I can't show you this, but whew, this is hot. Definitely a size difference. Like literally the whole kink of this is size difference. It's a size difference thing. Like, you know, it's like a pencil compared to a cucumber in sizes. But also he's like very sweet with him. As a lot of manga, the relationships are very sweet. And like, it's just really cute. This one had quite the cliffhanger. I read this after finishing Lore when I just was like, so, like I said, I was pretty frustrated with that book. And so that's when I read manga, is when I'm frustrated with another book. I'm like, I'm going to read something that will please me quickly. And boy, did this do it. This was super horny, but also really sweet because Caius is trying to woo him. Otherwise, if he can't woo him within a month, he said he'll try to find a way to send him home, even though it would mean the destruction of his world. We're just saying. So it was really hot. I can't show you a single, like, one of these panels, but like, oof. If you want to read a book that is, will it fit Titan's Bride? I still don't think that it really fit, but there we go. Okay. Then I reread Don't Hex and Drive by Julia Cross. This is for one of my patrons. This is book 2 in the Stay a Spell series. Do we need to have a recap of Stay a Spell? Probably not. This one is Devraj and Isadora. This is a vampire and a witch. He is also a Stygorn, which means he has like persuasive powers. And Ruben has asked him to come to New Orleans because he needs his help with something. And this was also really cool though, because we were getting some more insight on Ruben in this one. You know, when you're reading them in order, as you should. Ruben was in the most like recent book, and we see some of his like, you know, because Devraj is his best friend, so we see more about that. This one is a Grumpy Sunshine, where Isadora is the grump. She doesn't want anything to do with Devraj, which is fair because the first time they meet, he hits her with his car when she's on her bike. To be fair, she is riding at night with no reflectors, and he doesn't see her, and he gives her a little love tap. And then she finds out that actually he is her and her sister's next door neighbor. And it's just sweet. They're trying to stop this ring of like blood slavery that's happening, kind of, or like blood hosts are being abused, and that is not allowed to happen in New Orleans. No, it's not. So we work on stopping that. So that was lovely to reread. That's a 5-star book. It's a 2.5 on the spice scale. For that one, the kinks are, there's some blood play, there's biting. Also, Devraj is wonderful. He uses lube for no other reason than like he's too big for her. One of my favorite scenes, our first sex scene, is she's like, I have a condom in my bag, and he grabs it and he's like, honey, that's not gonna fit. So then he has to take her, he has to like, let me go get one, and he has to go get his own condom because hers is too small. And I was like, hey, number one, that's actually kind of practical because most condoms will work fine with everyone, but sometimes they don't. And if you don't have one that's not fitting right, that's not good for anybody. That doesn't make for safe sex. But he also uses lube just because. And you know what? I fucking love that because it is realistic, okay? It's realistic. Then I read God of Wrath. So this one is Jeremy Volkov, who is Annika's brother, who we were getting peeks at because he was very protective and obsessive of her, very much trying to keep her away from Creighton in that book. And now this is his, and he is interested in Cecily. And so this starts with Cecily doing a bit of recon for Landon because she is a little bit obsessed with Landon. She knows that they are into the same kink, and she wants him to be the one to like fuck her for the first time. But Landon is never going to love her, and so her obsession with him is definitely one-sided. But she joins this like app, and she fills it out with him as basically her specific like she's kind of trying to game the app to know that he's going to be the one she's setting up this anonymous scenario with. But there's a safe word for this, and they're going to set up a primal play scenario. But guess what? She doesn't get assigned Creighton. She gets assigned Jeremy, who's already kind of been following her because he knew that she had been the one who was at the initiation and was kind of, he didn't know she was spying, but he knew she'd snuck in. But it turns out he has the same kink, and he's also much more aggressive with it. So they, through this book, end up first having just a play relationship where multiple times a week they'll meet at one of his properties and they will have a primal play scene. And then afterwards there'll be a little bit of aftercare, but then he'll leave her there to finish resting and he'll go. And she, you know, it's how the relationship goes with this. Of course, with the complications of like him being, he's going to be the next head of the mafia, and her family, they're a wealthy family. They're not involved in like the crime side of things. And she also has a past trauma of, she was almost date raped by her boyfriend at the time. She wasn't ready to have sex with him, and so he drugged her and was going to rape her, but she threw up on him, and so then he didn't do anything. But she now like struggles with nightmares of like sleep paralysis, like her not able to move, and imagining someone doing something to her and acting out these primal play things where her choice is taken away, very much like help her with that. So I had some ups and downs with this one. Like of course I love primal play. I love primal kink. I just love that stuff so much. There was also blood play and breath play and bondage and pain and like all these things that Rena puts in a lot of her books. The thing that was really hard for me in the first like 80% of this book was Jeremy. He was harder to crack than even like the two like psychopaths we just read, and we definitely think he might be kind of like a sociopath is what Cecily thinks that he is. Also, a lot of this story this is happening at the same time as God of Pain, and so there are some serious events that happen in God of Pain that we know are going to affect their relationship. So I was just kind of waiting for that shoe to drop the whole time, and it was kind of like, okay, get up to current timelines type of thing. And then there also was specifically a scene where they play Russian roulette. Well, he forces them to play. And like, I'll just spoil it right now. Like, he didn't leave a bullet in, but she doesn't know that. And so they have this extremely erotic scene where because he's trying to get some info out of her. And so he's like, we're going to play Russian roulette and you're going to tell me. And she gets this amazing rush when he pulls the trigger and nothing happens. Like, she lives, and she just has these like insane orgasms because of that, which, I mean, good for her. Like, good for her. But also, he, at one point for one of the last ones, he puts the gun in her, and y'all, I know that can seem hot in a dark romance, but here's why it like doesn't work for me. It's a revolver he's using. He's using a 6-shot, or he's using a 5 or a 6-shot revolver. I can't remember what he said, but either way, he's using a revolver, which means, and I'm sorry to like explain things to people, but it means like, revolver pops down, you put bullets in, you snap it shut, you click, and each time you click, another slot falls in. When you play Russian roulette, if people don't know, that's where you take all the bullets out except one, and then you spin it, and so you don't know which shot will have the gun. And that's why, like, Russian roulette it's a suicide game, basically, so you don't actually play it. But the point is, he took it out, but she doesn't know that. And so the thing is, when you play Russian roulette, if you go back and forth more and more times and the gun doesn't go off, it obviously is upping the chances it's going to go off. So anyway, he at one point puts it in her to ask a question, and then he, like, pulls it, and she, like, just loses it when it doesn't go off, and, like, she just feels this rush of adrenaline of, like, being alive, which, I mean, okay, whatever. But I have a revolver. I don't know another way to say this. I have a revolver. I have shotguns in my life. I have them for protection. I grew up around them. I'm a farming girl, and I've never, I know they exist and people could probably, I've never seen a revolver that didn't have a sight on the tip of the gun, like right here, so that helps you, like, line up a shot. And all I could think about, I'm sorry I'm getting so specific, but my point is that talk about real life, like, niggling its way into you, is all I could think about, is that the type of gun he described would have this. And so this isn't a smooth cylinder. This isn't like, you know, you're just putting that in there and it's gonna, no. And also, again, if it is cleaned properly and it works, there's oil inside of it. There's gunpowder inside of it. So you're taking this with this edge, you're sticking it in, and you are going to tear the motherfucking shit out of her vagina. That's all that I could think. That's all that I could think. And I'm sure that Rena Kent wasn't thinking of that kind of weapon. I'm sure that's not what it was, but all I could think about was her poor vagina. Ugh. Anyway, okay. That didn't ruin the story for me, but that threw me out of it. And I, like, ranted to my friends. I was like, no, I can handle a lot of kinks, but please don't put the revolver in the pussy. Like, don't do it. But, okay. He won me over a bit in the last, like, 20% of this, and how he was trying to pursue her and win her over. So this didn't crash and burn. This didn't go fully down the way of previous Rena Kents that I haven't loved. It worked. I gave it 4 stars, and it was 5 on the spice scale for sure. You know, I listed all those kinks that it has. There is also the PTSD, previous attempted SA, and date rape drugs. Be aware of those, okay? Then I will talk just really quick about, I just finished Craving Paradise by J.A. Lowe. This was an anticipated book for me. I've read all the books in the Paradise series. This one overlapped with the timeline of the previous book. It again has the promise of this Paradise Club where there's supposed to be all these sexual desires we do. And the author puts a warning in the beginning of each book that there is lots of sex. There is sex with other people. There's sharing. There's voyeurism. If you're not prepared for there to be lots of sex, leave. And I'm always like, yes, I'm ready for it. And then there's 2 scenes where there's other people. And then that's it. Then it's just them. And boring sex. In so many times, like, there's a lot of it, but it's all boring. And that's literally happened in 3 of the 4 books of this, is it's like the author warning how much sex there is. And I'm like, yeah, but if it's the same thing every time, it's boring. Like, why? This isn't even like erotica. And then the characters don't get along. So, like, seriously, such bad communication, hurting the other person. Oh, I can't be with you. Oh, my job's in the way. All this or whatever. No. So I hung on to this series till the fucking bitter end, hoping that the Paradise Club was going to pull through, and it did not. So I gave this one 3 stars. It was a 4 on the spice scale. Voyeurism, sex club stuff. There's an FFM scene in here. There's some other, like I said, like voyeuristic scenes, like we get to see stuff, and there's some bondage, but didn't like it. Okay. The last book I want to talk about, but not least by any means, is that yesterday, my main goal was to get through this book, and I did it. I started it at noon, and I finished it at 11 o'clock last night, and I read Daughter of No Worlds by Crystal Broadbent. Came to me highly recommended by Crystal at Crystal's Bookish Life and Jessin from Jessin Reads Romance. They have read this whole trilogy. They've also read her other book as well, and they highly had recommended this. And I can't say no. It's also 29th Feb. Also, this book is gorgeous. Look at this. If you've read it, you'll know what these beautiful butterflies are. It's just beautiful. And so I snagged the audiobook of this. These were on Anyplay. It sadly looks like they didn't get to stay for very long, so that was a bummer. But I just snagged it off of Audible. And if you get the ebook, this one does have the upgrade for $7.50 if you want it. And I just snagged it. Also because I think I want my sister to read these, so I was like, I'll just grab it on Audible so that my sister can read it as well. So I'll be honest to you, this book is going to be hard for me to explain it. So I'm just going to read the back and I'm going to tell you how I felt about it. Because this is one of those that I already can tell you that I'm going to want to reread it. Once I read all of it, I'm going to want to reread this one because there was a lot in the first half that went a little bit over my head. That happens in a lot of fantasy, so it is not a slight to the book. That's a me thing. I zone out of it. So this is what it says. A life in slavery taught Tasana how to survive with nothing but a sharp eye, a quick mind, and a touch of magic. But the night she tried to buy her freedom, she nearly paid with her life. Instead, she murdered the most powerful man in Threll. Forced to flee, she has only one chance at saving those she left behind, pledging herself to the Orders, an organization of magic wielders strong enough to destroy her former masters. To earn her place, Tasana is forced into an apprenticeship with Maxentarius Farleon. Can't pronounce his name. I could hear it in my head, but reading it is actually weird to read. A handsome and reclusive fire wielder who despises the Orders. He has no interest in helping her, but as the Orders' grip tightens around them both, his bloody past may be the key to her future, or their downfall. Under looming war, Tasana must master her magic and survive the Order's demands, and as her feelings for Maxentarius deepen, she is forced to decide how much she is willing to trade away for revenge. The Order have bigger plans for Tasana, darker plans, but Tasana will stop at nothing to save those she abandoned, even if it means forfeiting her freedom and sacrificing her heart, even if it means wielding death itself. Okay? Like, just, okay, this book, you guys. Okay. So, as it says, like, Tasana is a slave. She's been a slave for 8 years. She finally has enough money to buy her freedom. She goes to the man who is her owner, also the one who, like, trained her and raped her and sees her as his object. And she has finally earned the amount of money that he said it would cost for her to buy her freedom. But when she tries to do it, he's extremely offended that she thinks she could ever leave him, and he proceeds to beat her. And that's where it says, like, she ends up killing this man, who's very powerful because of his, like, sex trade and the power. So she has a little bit of magic. She's never, been able to fully explore it. She's only really used it in her, like, acts that she does. Like, she will dance for the men to make the money and things like that. But she has like, one friend specifically who's also a slave. And then just the slavery that's happening in general. She wants to bring it down. And she wants the Order's help to do that. Now, the Order is more interested in another war that they have going on. And she's like, I will help you if you'll help me. And they're like, you don't have anything to offer. But she maybe kind of does, because the kind of power she has and the way she is able to wield it with the help of Max training her, she could be an asset to them. And then that would mean she has something to barter with, right? So, yeah, Max, he's very jaded. This is a grumpy sunshine. This is mentor-mentee scenario. I was explaining it to some of my friends that this really reminded me of, like, Heir of Fire in the scenario. Like, people are going to compare any fantasy book that's epic to Sarah J. Maas. I understand the comparison. I understand it. It even reminded me of Mistborn a little bit, like, with elements and there's, like, metals and things involved sometimes too. But any book that has that, like, grumpy, grizzled mentor and the new bright-eyed trainee who has a righteous goal, like, that is a trope. That is a hero's journey story. So I'm saying, like, Heir of Fire because I feel like a lot of people will have read that, but I'm not saying it to be like, oh, this is your next Sarah J. Maas. It could be. I've only read the first book. I don't know. But at this point, I'm comparing this one to Heir of Fire because it very much reminded me of, like, that warrior who is very jaded and just wants to, like, live out their life and not, like, deal with this. And then this bright-eyed trainee who's like, I need you to teach me. And they're like, no, I'm not going to teach you. She's like, I need you to teach me. And they'd, like, wear them out. So Max is definitely that. He's definitely grumpy. He's definitely jaded. There are secrets he can't tell, not just because he doesn't want to talk about them, because he can't. And then there's the training that happens with her. So this book is like just at 500 pages. It's not the longest fantasy you've ever read. And I will tell you, like, the character building, which I know might not turn everybody on and make them all excited, but it did for me. The character building in this was beautiful. I so fully feel like I know Tasana and just her heart and the type of person that she is and the sacrifices she's willing to make and the way she's willing to use her body, whether it was for sex before or whether it's to use her magic to wield for the order now, to be able to rescue people. It isn't just a righteous cause. Like, she personally cares about her friends who are slaves and knows that no one should have to be there. And that kind of, not even like bright-eyed innocent, because she's innocent in some ways, sure. And there are also times where, listening to the audio, where she sounds more innocent as well, because the voice that's used for her is very girly sometimes, but also there's a language barrier. She's learning a new language in here, and you know how sometimes that can make you sound more simple when you're learning a new language because you only know like simple words. So there were times in this where it felt like she was very young. And it's not like she's old. She's 21. But I mean, this woman was a slave for 8 years. She was also from a hard life before that. So definitely a lot of the innocence she projects is just that. Like, she's projecting it. And I love watching her use her cunning and grow. There is some crazy magic in here. I do not fully understand it, and I can't wait to learn more. There are characters I'm definitely keeping my eye on. There is a like evil entity that I am freaked out by. Like, oh, I got chills so many times by this one being in this book that I don't fully understand, but like, wow, I want to know more. And then this is a very slow burn between them. Like, this was a 5-star read for me. Okay, it is. It is. But it is a 5-star as like a fantasy. The romance is there and it is building, and I won't say that the relationship between Max and Tasana isn't important. It is essential. Like, it feels like a core of this story. But as for like steam level, this is a 1.5. But I say that and I don't want it to be a deterrent, even though I know it's going to be. It's going to be. But I'm also not going to lie and be like, oh, it's so much. Like, it is a slow burn between these two. They're also in like a mentor-mentee scenario for a while, and it's not like full out said, but I'm pretty sure there's at least a 10-year age gap between them, just based on like what his military service was and how like the age that she is when this starts. Like, there's at least 10 years between them. I feel like there's probably more. And so as someone who fantasy is my first love, this was beautiful. And I also feel like it's Heir of Fire in how the mentor-mentee relationship goes from antagonistic, at least on the hero's part, grudging, respect is starting to be built, the training is happening. Now we're like in a friendship where we want the other one to succeed, and then the friendship leading into this person is everything for me. So that is also how I feel like it was Heir of Fire, where like Rowan and Aelin start like antagonistic, and it's like she needs something from him, but he just won't give it, and she's like, you're being so fucking stubborn. And then there will be these opportunities where Tasana gets to show just some of her raw power, and then Max is like, I need to help her hone this and help her be in control. And that brings them closer when they have those moments of trust and growth between them. So I think this is beautiful. I'm so excited to continue. I almost want to start the next ones right away, but they're all 3 like 500-page books, and I just can't do it. But I want to grab the next audiobook, and I might start it when I'm on vacation. But I loved this. For me, my expectation of the first one was a medium level, just because I know that my friends really loved books 2 and 3, but this is definitely a character building book. And I can only assume it's because our characters are going to go through the gamut in the next couple of books, and you need to start that foundation right here. And I think that's another way that it could be compared to Sarah J. Maas, is that we don't get to the deep relationships in book 1. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, I've seen people who think this is too slow and they've DNF'd along the way, and I actually had to talk one of my friends through it. Last night she was like, I gotta switch books. I'm feeling like this. And I was like, where are you at? And she's like, well, I'm on this chapter. And I was like, could you give it until this chapter? Because this is the chapter that it like flipped for me. So if it doesn't flip for you by then go ahead and put it down, but just try. And she's like, okay. And then later she's like, I'm done. And I was like, because she finished it. And I was like, yeah, it was good. So I listened to this pretty much all in one sitting. It was totally worth it. I just had such a great time. So much. And I'm so glad that my friends, whoever recommended it to them, however they found it, I'm so glad they did. This author has many more books planned, not in this series, but like she has other books planned that I'm excited now. I'm a fan already, and I can't wait to read the next book soon. So there you go. Still ended up over an hour, but we talked about a lot of books, so I'm happy about it. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be gone the next week, like I said, but I have content planned the whole time, so make sure you're subscribed. Thank you to my patrons who support me. The fact that I'm able to take a week to be able to go celebrate it's an early birthday. Nobody needs to wish me a happy birthday yet. We still got 6 weeks to go. Don't worry. But this is my birthday trip that we're going on. And it has been -10, and it's like 70 degrees in Florida, so I'm very excited to go there. So thank you so much for watching, my friends. I will see you in the next one. Bye.